Well, good evening, good evening, good evening, and a very good evening to all of you. Welcome to our first presentation in our Family Life Enrichment Series 2025. So glad you have chosen to join us this evening. Last year, we projected the theme Healthy Families Matter. And during that Family Life series, we explored several healthy family matters. This year, we are projecting the theme towards holistic families, unlocking doors. This promises to be a very interesting and informative series. So I am encouraging all of you to invite as many of your friends, as many as your colleagues, as many as your family members as you possibly can to share in this invigorating experience. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. Let us pray together. Father in the highest heaven, we bow this evening in your presence and we acknowledge you as God. You are King of Kings and you are Lord of Lords. Thank you, O God, Lord, that you understand everything about us. So you know our challenges, Heavenly God. You know what we go through. You know the valleys that we who are your people are going through. You know the difficult mountains, Father God, that are confronting families. Despite the challenges, omnipotent God, we raise our voices in thanksgiving to you because you are bigger than any mountain and your ability transcends any valley that there is. So, whatever stands before us, we know that we are overcomers in Jesus Christ our Lord. Thank you, Holy God, for being our strength and being our stay. Thank you, sweet Spirit, for being our guiding light. We hand over to you everything that will happen during this Family Life Enrichment Series 2025. And we rely upon you, Holy God, for every success. We rest in the confidence, God, that it is not by our might, neither is it by our power, but it is by your Spirit. So we pray all these things, mighty God, in the wonderful name of our Savior Jesus Christ. Amen and amen. So tonight's presentation is the first of 5 presentations and has as its focus parenting. Parenting, we believe, is the master key to holistic family health. Our presenter for this evening session is Mr. Akeem Bethel. But before I introduce our presenter, please let me remind you that because of how we are set up, that is, that we are using the YouTube channel and the Zoom platform, you will not be able to pose your questions direct to the presenter. Those questions must be placed in the Zoom chat and relayed to the presenter via the moderator in the YouTube chat, sorry. I want to encourage you to place your questions in the chat as we go along and not to wait until the end of the presentation to do so. In that way, we can keep the flow going. Understand? Understood. Akeem Bethel is a counselor at Barbados. He is the holder of a Bachelor of Arts degree in social work. He advocates for the integration of self-care as a vital component of emotional well-being, healthy communication, and a strong and lasting relationship. Akeem is dedicated towards promoting effective communication in the family unit, emphasizing family bonds and personal wellness. Our presenter for this evening's presentation, Mr. Akeem Bethel.
Good evening, everybody. All right. Um, Okay. All right. Once again, good evening, everybody. My name is Akeem Bethel, and I am representing Barbados. Yes. So I am a counseling psychologist in training at Barbados. And before we get started with anything, I just want to talk about what Parados is and what Parados stands for. So Parados stands for Parent Education for Development in Barbados, and it is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to educate families on effective parenting, and we offer counseling services as well as advocating for children. So that what Parados is all about. And tonight I am representing us to talk about parenting, but more specifically, discipline. All right. Now, what exactly is discipline? So, so what exactly is parenting? So, parenting is the specific actions and behaviors that parents engage in to raise their children. This is the process of raising, nurturing, and guiding a child's physical, emotional, social, and cognitive development from infancy to adulthood. Now, what exactly is parenthood? So, parenthood could be defined as the identity of an individual who has a caregiving relationship with a child, regardless of their biological connection. Now, those two words definitely sound very similar and have a little similar meaning, but what is the difference between parenting and parenthood? So, parenthood is the what, that's being the parent, while parenting is the how, which is the actions taken to raising a child. So, a lot of times, a lot of people experience parenthood where they become parents, but they don't necessarily parent. Because with parenting, parenting is all about what are we doing in terms of allowing the child to receive their basic needs? Are they clothed? Are they receiving love? Are they being educated? Are they being nurtured? Are we developing this child into becoming a functional member of society? So that's where parenthood and parenting differs, right? So the goal in becoming a parent is also into knowing what parenting is all about, right? So now that leaves us with the next question. So in parenting, so is parenting instinctive or is there a need for training in parenting? So to answer that question, effective parenting involves both instinctive in nature and training. So these are shaped by a parent's personal experiences and the culture they live in. So while some aspects like nurturing and bonding might be instinctive, many parenting skills are developed through observation, experience, and education. So what this means is a lot of times as we develop, as human beings, we're very observant creatures. We take things that we see from around us, from online, from our experiences. So a lot of the ways that we want to parent comes from what we see. So for example, if you were raised a certain way by your family and you notice that you were raised a certain way, you would want to emulate that same experience that you had growing up onto your own child. Or sometimes you may have felt like, oh, I did not like the way that my mom raised me, so let me raise my child a different way than I was raised. But that is all based off your experience and your own observations growing up, as well as the education that you get, what you learn about with parenting as well. And a lot of the time, we kind of think to ourselves, do I need to learn more? Like, is it necessary for me to learn more? Because I'm a parent, so it's kind of in my nature to just know what to do. I see my mom do this, so is this something that is necessary for me as a parent? But a really important thing about life is there's so much more to learn. There's so much more knowledge that you can gain and understand about everything around us. So, although you may feel as though you are the excellent parent, there's so much more things you can learn to even improve and become a more effective and capable parent as well. So, together, these factors help parents to care for and raise their children in a way that meet their basic needs while also fitting into the world around them. So, the boundaries between friendship and parenthood. So this is a very tricky subject because although a lot of parents want to be that friend for their children, but there's also a line that you have to meet with that as well. So let's dive right into that. So the line between being a parent and being a friend means understanding that each role is different. Parents can still be loving, supportive, and have fun with their children, but they also have the responsibility to guide, set rules, and keep their children safe. This is different from the role of a friend. A friend is someone who is more like an equal and doesn't have the same responsibilities. Because as a friend, you don't have to set rules, you don't have to set those guidelines and those responsibilities. You kind of just go along with the flow with your friend. But that with that parenting responsibility, you have to be able to put your foot down and to be able to set those rules and to set those guidelines for your child, right? And that brings us to today's discussion. What is discipline? So the word discipline, the Latin origin of the word discipline comes from the word to teach. So to discipline your child is to teach them. You want at the end of, a discipline, you want them to be able to learn from that experience, to learn the action that they did was probably undesirable or desirable. So to discipline your child means to teach them responsible behavior and self-control. And with appropriate and constant discipline, your child will learn about consequences and take a responsibility for their own actions. So the ultimate aim is to encourage the child to learn to manage both their feelings and behavior. And this is called self-monitoring. So at its best, discipline rewards the child for appropriate behavior and discourages inappropriate behavior. Using fair and positive means. So what are So these are the three forms of discipline. So all these three types, so that's instruction, training, and correction. All these work together hand in hand to increase the result of effective discipline. So number one is instruction. Discipline begins with clearly communicating and teaching your child. So I'm gonna say the classic thing we would tend to hear or say to children, clean up your room. So the instruction being clean up your room. And when we come back to the room, let's just say an hour later, the room is still the same. We wonder why didn't they do it? We say, I just clearly said to clean your room. Clean your room is to clean your room. But did we clearly communicate that what do we want clean in the room? So children needs clear instructions. They need clear guidelines to understand the best way to, you know, do engage in task. So for example, you may say, please pick up the clothes off the ground. Please bring the dirty plates from out of the room into the kitchen in the sink to be washed. Or please make up your bed. All of those are specific tasks that you want them to do in order to properly clean the room. So giving clear instructions to children are very, 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 very important. So that way they have a clear guideline on how to complete the task. Now there's training. So training is to lead and direct growth of the child. So this means aiding the child in forming positive habits. So with training, a big part of training is consistency. And consistency isn't just for the child, it is also for the parents. So discipline is where parent and child work together in order for discipline to occur and for progress to happen. Both parent needs to be consistent in giving the instructions, training, and correction. So with training, which leading to that growth of the child, a great example of this is practicing your child to wash the dishes after they eat. So instructing them to say every time they finish eating, you remind them to say, hey, make sure when you finish, please put your plate in the zinc and please watch it. So by reminding them to do so will become like a routine. So training is to make sure that it'll become like a routine effect for children to continuously doing desirable actions, right? And forming their own positive habits. So eventually, after your child finish eating, they'll just get up and put the plate in the sink, right? And third, correction. Correction is changing a child's behavior by taking action to cause them to follow instructions. So correction is all about correcting them in that same moment and also being consistent with that correction as well. So in order for children to change those behaviors that we consider undesirable, we have to educate them. We have to correct them right then and then. So I'm going to use an example. So let's just say a child says a swear word. A lot of the times, sometimes parents would hear that and one time they would laugh at it and think it's funny, and then the other time correct it. But for children, and they're in their mind, okay, there's a chance my mom might not want me to say this, but she laughs when I say this sometimes, so I'm gonna say it whenever because it's fine. With correction, you want to be able to be firm and consistent with that same type of discipline. So you want to, as soon as you hear your child say this, a term or a phrase that is inappropriate, you correct them right then and be constant with that correction. So that's where those two terms come from. So with discipline, discipline is the structure that helps the child to fit into the real world happily and effectively. It is the foundation for the development of the child's own self-discipline. Effective and positive discipline is about teaching and guiding children, not just forcing them to obey. It is important that children are aware that the parent loves and supports them. Trust between parent and child should be maintained and constantly built upon. So now let's talk about punishment. So the purpose of a punishment is to stop a child from doing what you don't want them to do. Punishments encourage the child to learn to manage both their feelings and behavior. So there are four different types of punishments. And the first one being physical punishment. So physical punishment is like slapping, spanking, paddling, using a belt, a hairbrush. For verbal punishment, there's shaming, ridiculing, using cruel words, withholding rewards. I have a quote there that says, "You can't watch TV until you complete your homework." So withholding rewards is just withholding that leisure that they like. So something withholding things that they like to do. So for example, if your child likes to go on their tablet, but they won't do their homework, you would take away their tablet and say, "You won't get this back until you've completed your studies or you completed your homework assignments." So that's an example of pulling back rewards. And then there are penalties, which is number four. So I have another quote there that says, "You broke the window, so you will have to pay for it." So by doing chores around the house. So penalties is just consequences for the action of the child. So for example, in the same example, the child broke the window, so the consequence is that I will be deducting money from your allowance, or you will have to do chores for breaking the window to make up for what you did, so I can pay for the window. Yeah. So let's look at punishments and discipline. So with punishments, the punishments are harsh treatment. painful, verbal, and physical. It stops bad behavior. It focuses on past behavior, centered on anger, and leaves children with fear, guilt, and hostility. So when we look at discipline, however, discipline is about training to learn self-control. Remember the key word that we define discipline as, which is to teach. We want to teach children to have self-control. We want to teach them that, even without us having to tell you, we want you to be able to work on this on your own accord. We want you to be able to, without nobody in the room, know that, hey, I need to wash the dishes because this is something I know is important to do. Having that self-control without anyone telling you to do it because you know that's the right thing to do. And then discipline is also about learning to do the right thing. Just like I said, discipline is all about teaching your child and correcting those behaviors so that they are aware for future reference to know to do the right thing. And it also focuses on the future. It corrects behavior now. So by correcting the now and the present behavior, the child is able to know for future reference what not to do or what to do, right? So that's all about part of correction as well. So once they know what to do right there and then, they'll know now for future reference what they will have to do and what they need to do. Discipline is centered on love. At the end of the day, the reason why we discipline our children is because we want to make sure that they are going to be the best person they can be in society. We want them to grow up to be able to be functional members, and it's all out of love. We want to discipline them so they know the right habits to do. And then there, it provides security and it builds children's self-esteem. And the key word self-esteem is very important. So self-esteem is important because it's important for a lot, not just for children, even adults. It's very important because self-esteem is based off how we view ourselves in the world we live in. And as parents, we're not just parents, we are our children's educators, their helpers. We have a lot of roles that you have in being a parent. And one of that is making sure that your child has high self-esteem going into the world, right? So, discipline and punishment. So children sneak around to do something that is wrong, hoping that they won't get caught. So a lot of the times when children do things, they hope that they don't get caught. And sometimes when they do get caught, they tend to lie and or tell or say the wrong or spread false information because they don't want to get in trouble when they do get caught. And a lot of the times they think they could get away with it, but as parents and adults, you are aware that these are some things that you also did or your siblings have done when you were younger, so you know the tricks by now, right? So, and I have something at the bottom that says like no one incarcerated adults thought they would get caught. And that could just be like the same exact thing in this case as well. You don't expect to get caught, so you think you would just keep doing it over and over, right? So, letting children experience the consequences of their actions is a form of discipline. Children learn from experiences just like adults, right? So I'm gonna share a personal story with this, with the common phrase, because these two sentences represent the phrase that says, if you don't listen, you're gonna feel. Growing up, I love doing flips. That's back flips, front flips, cartwheels, any type of flip, I'm gonna try it when I was younger. I think I was like 10. And I showed my mom, and my mom said, Akeem, do not do that again. That is dangerous. You're gonna get hurt. And I didn't know what my mom was talking about because I've been doing it this entire time and I haven't gotten hurt yet. So I did it at school. All my friends thought I was so cool. I was Spider-Man. I was doing my tricks. No one could tell me anything. So even though my mom told me to stop, I continued doing it anyway. And one day I was at my aunt's house and gathered my cousins around for them to see me do a backflip. Yeah. So as my cousins cheer me on as I do a flip, I landed on my arm and I broke it. And now here's baby Akeem going towards his mom with a broken arm. And my mom looked at me and said, "You better not tell me you did a flip, because the last thing I told you was to not do that anymore." And she's like, "Now you see what's happened, you don't listen." And I want everybody to guess if I've ever done a flip after that. And if you said no, you are very correct. I've not done a flip since then. I've never been thought about it again. So that's an example of me listen. That's an example of me having to like experience that for myself because I just wouldn't listen to my mom. And honestly, if I hadn't listened to my mom, if I had listened to my mom, that wasn't gonna happen. And if I didn't hurt myself, I wasn't gonna stop regardless. So a lot of times children needs to experience it on their own to know what not to do it again. Unfortunately, we don't want them to get hurt in those situations. So for example, putting your hand on a hot stove, you don't want them to burn themselves, but sometimes until you kind of experience it, then you'll know for yourself. So now let's talk about discipline in the Caribbean. So we live in the Caribbean where we understand that we discipline boys and girls differently. We let boys be more wild, we let them be loud. And in terms of punishments, we tend to give them more physical punishments. And when they kind of show signs of hurt or they tend to cry, a lot of people would discourage that and will call them names and saying they're being soft and stop being a girl. Why are you crying for? While as when we discipline girls, we tend to be more softer with girls because we don't want to hurt them because we see them as delicate. However, we also encourage girls to be seen and not heard and to not really be able to express themselves. And we are more protective of girls, whilst we let boys be boys, be boys. The famous saying, whilst we don't allow them to be vulnerable, whilst we let girls be vulnerable. And a lot of times we also expect girls to like have an attitude and to express themselves in that way and to express their emotions without making them feel bad about it and almost encouraging it. And with discipline in the Caribbean as well, growing up, which is very famous, a lot of times the first thing that parents would do back in the day when a child do something that wasn't desirable was you were saying get lashes. And sometimes that's the first thing your parents could find in their hand. It was either their hand, the shoe, the stick. One time my friend got hit with a book. Like it's different things of Caribbean parents is fine as a way to give lashes, right? So, however, what effect does this have on our society today, right? Because a lot of the times we tend to treat boys and girls differently in terms of how things are in society, as well as just discipline in general. But these team behaviors have an effect on their development and how they become in the future and functioning members of society, right? So for boys, these type of disciplines and these type of behaviors that we do in the Caribbean result in boys having poor self-discipline, poor education, and turning to violence to express themselves. Because a lot of the times that same feeling that they hold in, they don't know how else to express it because it's been so held in and encouraged to be kept to themselves until it kind of balls up and bottles up so much that it comes out in violent ways. It comes out and it might not be physically violence, but it could be verbal violence. It could be emotional violence that they put onto people. And then those same people go into society, those same people go into the world, and then we ask ourselves when we see the crime, why are things like this when it starts from a very young age? It starts from in the home and the way that we discipline and raise our boys and girls. And for girls, girls are girls believe that they they're the weaker gender. It teaches those same type of disciplines teach girls that it teaches girls that emotional reactions and making others feel guilty can make them get away with a lot. It teaches them that although they should just be seen and be heard, so if something was to happen to them, it's almost like who's gonna believe me? Because, we kind of blame women or blame girls in general for when things happen to them based off how they look or saying they deserve it because that's how they look, and training them to keep those type of things to themselves. And those things have an impact on girls' self-esteem. It has an impact on the viewing through life. And just like that too, these same girls turn into women and turn into mothers. And what are they gonna portray into their daughters as well? They're gonna teach their daughters those same exact things that they learned and that they've experienced. And the cycle continues as well. As mentioned before, I mentioned corporal punishment with lashes, but let's dive more into that. So, what is corporal punishment? This is the use of physical force intended to cause some degree of pain or discomfort as a disciplinary measure. This includes spanking, slapping, or hitting with an object. So at Parados, we encourage alternative types of punishment, types of discipline. But before I dive into that, I wanted to also talk about the effects that corporal punishment can have on an individual. So it can cause physical and emotional harm for both parents and child. So when children do stuff or do something that's undesirable, the first thing that, you know, you grab the belt and you're already so upset or you're already so frustrated. And then when you give them the lashes, it's even more exaggerated because of the intense emotions you feel, and it inflicts even more physical pain and inflicts more emotional harm. And that same thing can also lead to damage in the parent and child relationship as well. So when corporal punishment is involved in the dynamic between parent and child, it results in children feeling that they can't trust their parents. It results in children building resentment towards their parents, and also can make children not feel like they can be able to talk to their parents. And instead of having respect for them, you develop fear. Then corporal punishment also increases aggression in children. So when children are very observant individuals and just observing beings in general, so when children observe that when their parents get angry at them, they get lashes, those same children use that same coping technique into their life as well. So let's just say someone gets beaten at home, that same child is going to go to school. And when someone makes them mad, they're also gonna get in fights. They're gonna get physical with other people because that's what they learned how to handle situations when they're upset. It can also cause them to build anger issues or just become a more angry or violent person. It is also risk of escalation, which basically also means that, it can cause them to grow up to think that this is the way of solving my problems, and getting violent with the students at school and even getting violent with adults. And it can also have an impact on mental health as well. So studies have shown that corporal punishment can cause depression, it can cause low self-esteem, it can also cause anxiety, and it can also cause a rift between the parent and child relationship. And a lot of times I've asked people that if they believe that corporal punishment has been effective, and a lot of the times they share that it's effective in that short moment, but the child still continues to do the same behaviors again and again and again. Or the child got used to getting beaten, so I don't know what else to do, or that these it's not effective in the long run. But sometimes when you don't know what else to do, you kind of just use the same type of punishment because that's what you learned growing up. We are products of what we learn based off, the instinctive and what we learn in that environment. So we just tend to do what we see when we don't know what else to do. And that is what this next slide is for. Here are disciplinary techniques that you can use instead of corporal punishment. So let's talk about the reward system first. So the reward system is rewarding children for when they show desirable behaviors. So that means when we see children, let's just say you ask your child to wash the dishes and they do it right away, you would tell them, good job, or I'm so proud of you, or give them a hug, just basically praising them. Positive reinforcement is very important in terms of discipline because you want the child to know that you appreciate, love, and want to encourage that same type of behavior to keep happening within the home or school or in general, right? Once again, the key word we want to teach them to keep on having that same self-control to do this on their own. So at Parados, we teach the reward chart or the reward board. So the reward board is basically where you have you have a chart. Let's just say the goal is to get 10 stickers. So each time a child does a desirable action or does a desirable task, we would reward them with a sticker, and you let them know if you get 10 stickers, then 10 stickers equals a big prize. So then that child would want to keep doing positive things or keep doing things that would get them that sticker so that they can get 10 stickers. And once they get 10 stickers, you're able to give them their reward, which can be anything they like. So if I know what they like and what they enjoy, so it could be if they like going to the beach, their big reward, here you got 10 stickers, boom, you can go to the beach. You can go to the beach one day. Or it could be a pizza. It could be anything that they enjoy, food wise, outing wise, maybe extra time outside, even giving them like $2, just encouraging that same behavior. And a lot of the times we kind of think, isn't this bribing our children? Like this is just bribing them to just do things. We shouldn't need to bribe them. And it's not bribing them, it's more so encouraging them to, you know, keep continuously do this behavior. And remember what I said, consistency and training. So it's training them that, okay, I'm going to keep doing this and doing this to eventually becomes like a routine for them where it just becomes second nature. It becomes, okay, well, I'm just going to throw this garbage out because this is what I've been doing. I'm used to this now. It's just teaching them how to continue that same behavior. And then there is ignoring tantrums. So ignoring tantrums is where when children throw tantrums, where they screaming, shouting, throwing themselves on the ground, we want to immediately go to them and be like, oh, stop, 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 calm down, please. Because we don't, a lot of times we feel embarrassed about it, or we don't hear them crying, or we just really tired and we just don't want to hear it. But ignoring the tantrums is very important because children throw tantrums when they don't know how to express their feelings. They throw tantrums when they want attention from their parents or attention in general. And by giving them that attention, it shows that, okay, so I can just throw myself on the ground and my dad's just gonna come and help me. I'm just gonna scream and kick up and make a fuss because I know my mom's gonna do what I want to do in the first place. She's gonna give me that candy. So by ignoring the tantrums or ignoring the behaviors that they're displaying, it shows that eventually they're going to calm down and realize that that behavior isn't something that is desirable. It is something that won't be helpful. That's not the way to get mom and dad's attention. And then after that, you would teach them the correct ways to get that they would want to get your attention and correct that behavior. Okay. And that is a tricky one because a lot of times we do feel embarrassed by it, but we also want to be consistent. And like I mentioned earlier, discipline isn't just a short thing that happens overnight. It's a consistent process, and it involves not only something for the child to do, but also something for the parents to do as well. And then there is loss of privileges. So loss of privileges is where we take away things from them that they enjoy doing. So for example, a lot of children these days have with their tablets, they like to, play their games on their tablets, go on TikTok, watch slime videos, or, they like to go outside and spend time outside. So loss of privileges is when a child does an undesirable action. So let's just say you ask your child to wash the dishes and they didn't do it and they wouldn't listen to do so. So you take away their access to their TV access or their phone access. And at the end of the day, those are things that they enjoy having and using. So the first thing they want to do is, okay, me just do what I have to do so I get my phone back. So taking away their privileges allows them to realize that at the end of the day, you have to, correct that behavior in order for you to get what you want or get, your phone or your access to the TV. You have to complete tasks that was asked of you. And then there are timeouts and timers. So we heard the term timeouts before, and we have the idea of, okay, when children do something wrong, we put them in the corner and they stay there for as long until they know to do better. But is actually a time for children to reflect on their actions or use that as a time to calm down when they have a lot of emotion or expressing a lot of emotion or expressing a lot of frustration. So timeouts is supposed to be like a time for where children can be able to use that time to understand that they need to, realize what they did was undesirable or problematic. And then at the end, or beforehand, you let them know that you're going on timeout because you didn't sweep the floor, or you're going on timeout because you used a swear word after I told you that was inappropriate and you did it again. And we also want to be realistic with the time that we give our children as well. We can't expect a 7-year-old to be on timeout for 30 minutes. 7-year-olds have energy out of this world, so I expect them to stand there or sit there in the chair and to think is not realistic, and it's only gonna upset us in the long run. We have to meet our children where they're at, so we can't expect them to do those things as well. And with the timers, we can use timers as a way to set and say, okay, when the timer goes off, then you will know that's when your timeout is up. But we also want to encourage that we don't just give punishments, or we don't just we don't just take away things. We let them know why we're doing those things. So you're on timeout because we're taking away your phone because we have to inform them so they know why what they did was problematic, and let them know the correct way of going about things from now on. So keyword educate, keyword teach, keyword consistency. And then there's creating rules for the household. So creating rules for the household involves, for example, chores. A lot of the times when we tell our children to their chores is to take out the garbage, and then they'll be like, "Oh, I didn't remember that I had to do that." So creating rules such that so having like a physical copy of it can also be really helpful so that you can have it around the house so they'd be aware or have a checklist to know the rules of the house. So by having those rules, they'd be able to look at it and, you know, do those same tasks. And it doesn't have to be with chores, it can be with structure for morning time. So have a list to say, okay, when you wake up, brush my teeth, shower, eat, put on my school clothes so I can head out at a timely fashion. Or when I come home, shower, eat my food, study, do work, and have TV time, bedtime. So it's just creating rules and structures for the house. And we may believe that, oh, how can this happen? Will this be able to work? If you think about it, children have schedules at school and they know when recess is, they know when they have math, they know when, they're aware of these things because they have structure at school, letting them know that this is what I have to do, and they follow that. So incorporating that same format at home can be a way for them to follow and create that same structure, because structure is very important in terms of discipline. And finally, we have one-on-one time. So one-on-one time is where we allow to have that one-on-one time with our children. We spend time with them, even if it's 15 minutes. We have time to just ask them about their day. We ask them how they are feeling. You want to build that relationship with them. You want to be able to ensure that they know that they can talk to you, they can share with you, and that you are someone that they can trust. Doing activities with them, so maybe carrying them for Chef Ed, going for a drive, listening to music together. And it doesn't have to be something where you have to spend money either. You can make TikToks with them. You could watch a movie with them. It's all about just doing something they enjoy and building a bond, because that is also really important in terms of, building that relationship with your child and with discipline. All right. So then there is behavioral development. So to understand what typical behavior is at different stages of development will help you to to set acceptable limits. So just like I mentioned earlier, we want to meet children where they're at. We don't expect an infant to wash the dishes. I hope so. We don't expect the infant to wash the dishes. We want to meet them where they're at. So during the infant stage, they are exploring their senses. So they are feeling, tasting, hearing, smelling the world around them. Whereas for toddlers, they are learning new skills such as walking and crawling and jumping and running. So during that stage, you teaching them how to walk. That first part, you helping them to walk. Let them get accustomed to grabbing things. So they experience a greater range of feelings, but they don't have the language yet to express those feelings. So what that means is a lot of times they would tend to fry because they don't know how to ask for what they want. They haven't reached that point to say, Mom, I want the pizza, or Mom, I can't reach that. Can you get that for me? Their response is to cry. And it's all about for parents is to understand that this is where my child's at right now. They're developing, so I need to understand what I could do to help them at this point in time in their stage of development. Then there are preschoolers. So preschoolers are curious and ask questions about everything. And this could be annoying for some people. I definitely was that preschooler that would ask my mom questions about every little thing. Why is the sky blue? Why is the road black? Why do I have to go to school? Why do I have to wear this to school? Why can't I have my hair like this? Why can I do this? It's because they have that curiosity and they just want to know. And a lot of times parents believe that they are being disrespectful on purpose, but this is the stage where they are learning and they're developing in understanding the world around them. They are their curiosity is piqued and they try to just figure everything out. We've been in the world longer than them, so we are aware of why the sky blue. We understand why trees do what they do, why the wind blow, why cars do this. But it's new for them and they want to know. So although it can be really annoying, at this stage we want to be patient with preschoolers. Now school agers. So school agers, they are challenged by fitting into larger groups and they feel that they are old enough to make their own decisions. So these school agers are at the point where they believe that they understand everything. They are aware of what's going on. They learned this on a TikTok, so they know what to do. Or, hey, I know how to cook because I saw this in a video, so mom, let me cook. Or, they basically just trying to understand themselves as individuals. So there's another part where we have to be patient with them as well. And number five, which is every parent can't wait to experience, which is dealing with a teenager. Fun, very fun. And a lot of times we believe that parents need the most patience for toddlers or infants. But I believe personally for this stage, you need a lot of patience because a lot of behaviors you kind of expect from an infant. You kind of expect them to cry and to, carry on the way that they carry on. But, with teenagers, it's more frustrating because it's they can argue back with you. And yeah. So for teenagers, they are more interested in the opinions of their peers rather than their parents, and puberty results in experimentation. So what this means is, so because, at that age, you believe that your parents don't understand you, but your friends understand you because, they understand me because they be going through the same thing as of, together because we're in the same generation or we in the same class, so they would get it. My mom don't understand. She's too old. They don't get it, which is really frustrating on the hair because you've been through the same process too, but at that age, they don't really care or think about it like that, which can be really frustrating. And then because with their hormones and their everything that they're experiencing, everything is more traumatic for a teenager. Little thing like things to you that can be seeming little, like a friendship breakup for them, is like the end of the world. Getting a pimple is the end of the world. So everything is more intensified for a teenager. So patience is definitely important in this stage of life. All right. So types of parenting style. So when it comes to parenting, there's a great deal of diversity among families. So cultural backgrounds have a major impact on how the family unit exists and how children are like reared. So different families have different cultures, different traditions, and different backgrounds. And parenting styles are passed on from generation to generation. So either we follow that same generation patterns or we make our own generational patterns. So for example, just like corporal punishment, you may have gotten lashes and your mom may have gotten lashes, but you don't want to you don't want to teach that same type of discipline to your child. So you started to implement a new type of disciplinary style with them. Or a lot of times, some parents or culture might be different where they are, or maybe Baptist, and then you want to be an Anglican, and then your child follows that as well. So it's all about the cultural backgrounds and differences with that. So now let us look at the types of parenting styles. So there are four different types of parenting styles. There's authoritarian, there's the uninvolved, the permissive, and the authoritarian. The authoritative and the authoritarian. So let's talk about the permissive parent first. So we see that they have low expectations, fewer rules, they are more accepting, more lenient, and avoid like confrontation. But they're also warm. And a quote from them is whatever you want. So as you can see on the crosswalk or the cross there, it's low demandingness, but high responsiveness. So permissive parents tend to be warm and nurturing and usually have minimal or no expectations. They impose limited rules on their children, and communication remains open, but parents allow their children to figure things out for themselves. These low levels of expectation usually result in rare use of discipline. Okay? So, and this type of parenting, it tends to lead to children with unhealthy eating habits, especially with snacks and other habits such as becoming more selfish or more demanding and more impulsive that children can become. Okay, so now looking at the authoritarian, which is on the bottom right. So with authoritarian parenting, it has high expectations, clear rules, forceful, rigid, punishment, limited warmth, and the quote right there that says, "Because I said so." Do it because I'm your mom and I say so. So low responsiveness, high demandingness. So with authoritarian parenting, this parenting style tend to have a one-way mode of communication where parents establish strict rules that their children have to obey. There's little to no room for negotiation from children. The rules are not usually explained. They expect their children to uphold these standards while making no errors. Mistakes usually lead to punishment, and authoritarian parents are normally less nurturing and have those expectations that with limited flexibility. So, yeah. And uninvolved parents. So these are the parents who have no expectation, fewer rules, are absent, are passive, neglectful, uninterested, and competing for priorities. So the quote I that's here is, "I really don't care." And this type of parenting can also be known as neglectful parenting. So it's very low in demandingness and low in responsiveness. And this can lead to children who may lead to children with low self-esteem. They may feel like their parents don't care about them or love them. This can lead to low academic performance, difficulty socializing, and yes. So authoritative parenting. So this type of parenting is more known as to have exceptional result in raising children. So this is high expectations, clear standards, assertiveness, keyword assertiveness, uh, democratic, flexible, responsive, and warm. It is high in responsiveness and high in demandingness. Its quote is less discuss, right? The quote is less discuss from them. So this type of parenting normally develops a close, nurturing relationship with their children. They have a clear guidelines for their expectations and explain their reasons associated with disciplinary measures. Disciplinary methods are used as a way to support instead of punish. Not only can children have an input in goals and expectations, there are also frequent and appropriate levels of communication between the parent and the child. In general, this parenting style leads to healthiest outcomes for children and requires a lot of patience and effort on both parties. So, authoritative parenting results in children who are confident, responsible, and able to self-regulate. They can manage their own negative emotions more effectively, which leads to a better social outcome and emotional health. Since these parents are also encouraged are also encouraged to, be independent. So their children will learn that they are capable of accomplishing the goals that they set for themselves. So, your child's ability to understand. Disciplining a child means teaching them what is acceptable behavior. A child's intellectual ability develops over time, and it is important to match the discipline of your child with your child's capability to understand. So, reasons for misbehavior. Children misbehave for many reasons. So the first reason being they are too young to know that their actions are unacceptable. They are frustrated, angry, or upset, and have no other reasonable way of expressing their feelings. They are stressed by major changes such as family breakups, new siblings, or starting school. They are not getting your attention when they do behave appropriately. They feel you have been unfair and want to punish you. or they need a greater degree of independence and feel constricted. So these are just some examples of why children misbehave, just to have a better understanding of what, the reasoning for behavior outcomes. So from what I shared during the presentation, some major things to take away and to remember: disciplining boys and girls fairly. A lot of times we, a lot of times we ask ourselves, why are people in society the way they are? What's going on? But in our own homes, we are doing those same things. We're restricting change and restricting that same type of behavior onto our children, and that they're gonna grow up to have to reflect when they go into society as adults. The major thing that parents that with parenthood and parenting is we are creating people that are going amongst others in society. So you want to be able to ensure that your children are disciplined fairly and they are not being treated based off stereotypes, right? You want to show, regardless if they're a boy or girl, you want to ensure that they are able to get that same type of love, that same type of connection. They're able to get that same type of discipline, which is fair and stern both ways, right? And two, the use of instruction, training, and correction. I just want to remind you all of those three key aspects because those are very important when it comes to discipline. So going over it again, so instructions is very important because you want to be able to be clear when we give our children instructions. You want to be clear on the tasks that we want them to do so they can fulfill those tasks the best that they can do and the best in their ability. And then there's training, which is basically setting structure and being constant with their behavior. So for example, study time is this time, let's be constant with that, being consistent. And then there's also correction, which is correcting the child's behavior right there and then so they are aware to know not to do this behavior in the future. And then third, use of consequences. So using consequences to ensure that so they'll be able to be aware of why and letting them know why you disciplining them as well. They have to be aware to know what's going on. You don't want to discipline them and they don't understand why they're being disciplined because you want to be able for them to know why so they know not to do it in the future. Because we want to remember that discipline is important for both future behaviors. You want to correct it in the present, so in the future, they won't be able to continue that same behavior again. And then use of delay of privilege, so that just meaning taking away things. So it's just more examples of forms of discipline. So there's the privilege, the reward system, positive reinforcement, which is very important because not even just children, we all love being praised. We love hearing that we're doing a good job. We love hearing people say we're proud of us. So imagine for a child's development and forming their own type of self-esteem and their own type of self-love and self-care, you want to encourage that same exact behavior for them, right? And you want to avoid using physical punishment. And just like I mentioned, those effects of physical punishment can really result in a lot of things like the discord between you and your child. It can result into mental health issues, can result into effects that harmful and emotional effects. So all those things play a part in physical punishment. And lastly, but most importantly, you want to let your child know you love them. You want them to know that the reason why you do what you do is because at the end of the day, you love them and you want them to be the best person that they can be. A lot of the times we believe that we don't even need to say that because our children know. I mean, I dropping you to school, I buy your school clothes, I feed you, so clearly I love you. I don't need to say it every time, but that type of affirmation, knowing that, hearing it from your mom or hearing it from your dad or just hearing it from a loved one or a guardian or a parent, that they are loved is very important. It builds their self-esteem. It lets them know that, this person is in my corner. This person loves me, and this person cherishes me. This person wants the best for me, which is very important in the development of them going to school, interacting in the real world, and when into adulthood. So the word love is very important and plays a big part in the development. And we have to remember that we were children once as well. So the way that we would want to be treated when we were younger, or maybe we got treated the way we did want to get treated. So even the way we got treated, we want to be able to reflect that on our children. Because at the end of the day, they are people, tiny people who live longer than us, less than us, but they still deserve that same love and respect from their parents as well. And before I wrap up tonight, I want to promote our positive parenting classes that we are having at Barbados. So we are at two locations, and we are located at the Jackson's Church of Nazarene, and the time that it begins is from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. as well. And it starts from May 20th to July 29th, and that'll be every Tuesday at that location, so the Jackson Church of Nazarene. And then we also have another location on Thursdays from May 29th to August 7th at Pardos, which is our main location. And if you don't know where Pardos is off Roebuck Street through Perry Gap. So you can register by scanning the code right here. Okay, you get it right here. And right there. And it is free, and it's an 11-week class, and you're gonna learn how you and your child can, gain tools for creating a nurturing, supportive, and empowering home environment, dealing with bullying, safety, with negotiating technology use, and ensure online safety for your family, positively collaborating to enhance family dynamics, and acquiring conflict resolution skills, and just a lot more topics as well. There's going to be guest speakers, and yeah, so I definitely recommend that. That'll be a really great learning experience because, just like I mentioned in my presentation, that parent you can learn so much more. A lot of the times we believe that we know everything about parenting, but there's just so much more we could learn. Life is an endless journey of self-discovery. It's an endless discovery of, gaining knowledge around us. And although you was a good parent, you can be a even better parent as well. Childcare is also provided, so if you having problems with finding someone to watch them when you to come to this, the childcare is also provided. So yes, that's some information on that. And I want to say thank you so much for listening to my presentation. And yes, thank you. And in terms of the parenting classes, I will also send it to the father so he'll be able to distribute it out as well.
Thank you so very much, Akeem, for your comprehensive and informative session. And there's so much to learn, so much to wrap our minds around. And the last hour or so has been time which has been well spent. I'm sure that we can take away a lot from your presentation. We want to thank you very much. There are some questions that have been placed in the chat, so don't run away. I want to present these questions. I would also want to let our audience know that we also have with us Miss Terry Bess Thompson. who is the senior counselor with Barbados, and she is with us. We want to welcome her and want to thank her for being with us. And if necessary, I'm sure that she'll be able to field some of the questions and that we have in our chat. So before I go to these questions, I remember quite distinctly, and I do know that you have focused on discipline. And there are certain things that live with you. So when I was about 13 years of age, we were playing outside. At that time, there was no real electricity in our houses didn't have electricity. We were children, we were playing on the outside. And there were a group of us as children. And the mother of one of the persons who were playing came out and disciplined her daughter. And we laughed. But the little girl, well, teenager said, look, y'all can laugh, but I'm glad that I have a parent who cares enough for me to be able to discipline me. And so I took that through my life so far, and the importance of discipline has really stayed with me. Of course, there is that well-known story of the prisoner, the man who was on death row, and he was asked if he had a last wish, and he said he wanted to see his mom. And when his mom came, he leaned over and he bit off her ear and said, if you had disciplined me, I would not have been in this position. So we thank you for sharing all about discipline. And I do hope that even as we as listeners and hearers would take much of what you have said or all of what you have said to heart. So the first question that I want to pose that has been placed in our chat, what can you do if one parent wants to instill discipline, but the other parent wants to be the child's friend and does not want to discipline?
All right. That is, and I hope this is not surprising, but a lot of times that's kind of the dynamic or the route that, the fun, good cop, bad cop, or good parent, fun parent, the term fun parent comes from. So you want to be able to you want to be able to communicate with them to let them know that you don't want to you don't want to come across as the bad guy in front of the child, because that can also be used. Children notice those things and they would use that as a way to manipulate the situation. So they're aware that, okay, so my mom's the strict one or my dad's the strict one, so I'm gonna ask the less strict one so that I can be able to do what I want to do. So if I want to go out to a party, I'm not gonna ask the strict parent, I'm gonna ask the fun parent. And that could be really problematic and cause discord and, problems right there. So it's really important to, have a conversation with your co-parents and inform them that that type of, you know, being their friend or being the fun parent can cause a rift in them wanting to listen to you or, build resentment from you. So you want to be on equal playing fields with the parent. So letting them know that we have to be a united front. We have to be able to communicate with one another openly and respectfully and be able to work towards we have to work towards being able to discipline them effectively. And if you're the only person disciplining the child and the other parent isn't, it's gonna hurt your relationship with the child whilst the child likes the other parent more, which isn't fair. So you want to encourage them to also, you know, become one. Because when you're co-parents, you want to be able to have the same value systems and be on the same page with discipline as well. So even in that case, maybe also asking them, okay, so the way that I'm disciplining the child you may not agree with. So instead of me disciplining the child like this, is there an alternative that you would want to do? So for example, let's just say your style is more so let's take away privileges. You can ask the next parent, okay, well, if you don't agree with this, what is a way that you feel more comfortable with that both of us can do this together? So you want to be able to come up with a compromise as well so that they can also be on board with it and encourage them to help out in the discipline department as well. I hope that answers.
Very well, very much so.
Yeah.
Second question that has been placed that we have for you, Akeem. How do you address parents who fail in disciplining their children, but attempt to discipline other parents' children?
Mhm. And honestly, in a Caribbean standpoint, because my mind said discipline in the Caribbean, that's something I wish I touched on too, because a lot of the times it's so easy to look at another person's, to look outside and comment about what's going on in somebody else's yard and in someone else's house. And we have our own issues in our own spaces in our own houses as well. We ignore we kind of ignore our own problems and tend to focus on, you know, other things. Because I think maybe in other people's mind, they believe that it's easier to manage some like an outside force in a way than tackling their own inner personal, not struggles, but their own personal dynamics. It's easier to say, oh, this what you need to do, or this what you should have done. This what I would do if I was in your situation. But in their own situation, they are struggling. Because it's easier to comment on other people's life and their situation rather than working on yourself. So a lot of the times, you know, that's the type of things people are going through. So the way to address those parents who would make those type of comments, you don't want to straight up say mind your business because that's you don't want to be rude, but you want to let them know that there's so much stuff that like going on and that they may not know about. They only seeing what is being shown, but they don't know the background of what you're going through or what you're experiencing or what's happening behind closed doors, and to respect your privacy and to allow you to discipline your children on your own, or allow that person to discipline their children without jumping in unless they ask. So, just saying it in a more respectful way without calling them out on their own disciplinary tactics.
Thank you very much, Akeem. I grew
Mm-hmm.
up in a time when um, other people were not afraid to discipline other people's children.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose that in those days it was like it takes a village to raise a child, so you had to be careful how you behave because you could get disciplined by others who were not your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, how do you discipline a child who has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder? I do know that you spoke during your presentation on allowing the discipline to fit the capacity and the capability of the child. How do you discipline
Mm-hmm.
a child who has ADHD?
Mm-hmm. So with handling a child with ADHD, they tend to be more, because as we understand what ADHD is, they can either have the attention deficit part of it or hyperactive parts of it. So I'm just gonna try to touch on those different parts as well. So with those, like I say in this, like you mentioned too, I mentioned that you have to tailor to what is specific to your child. So, and every child is different. So let's just say you have a child already and you have another child and that child has ADHD. What you would do with the first child, you can't really do with the second one. Not even just because they have ADHD, just in general, it's really different. But we're tackling with children with ADHD, with the hyperactive part of it, they tend to kind of bounce off the wall, or really hyper, or and it can be really frustrating. So with that, you would want to be careful with their sugar intake because that can make them even more hyperactive. So that's very important with that. And in terms of discipline, you want to ensure that they are aware that they have to calm down. So because they're so hyper, or so their mind, so much things running on their mind, because with ADHD, they are more so much things happening in their mind at once. So you want to be able to calm them down, help them to relax, and before you talk to them, you have to bring them to a place where they're able to hear you and listen to you. So maybe sitting them down and saying, let's breathe, let's calm down for a second, let's breathe, relax, relax. And another form to help with that as well is working with sorry, another way to help with that as well is having timers. I mentioned that in my PowerPoint as well. You have to be realistic, especially within this case because of their hyperactivity or because of their attention deficit, they can't sit still for as long. So for example, let's just say they are eating at the table and or they're studying and you would say, okay, in 15 minutes you have a break from sitting at the table. Or at 15 minutes you can have a break from doing your assignment and you allowed to jump up and down or move around for 3 minutes and then you have to come back and sit down and focus because they have to release that energy. If you sit down for so long and put all your focus into it, with somebody ADHD, they can't do that. So it's not fair, to just force them to sit there because it's just gonna be frustrating for you and frustrating for them. So just setting those timers to allow them to be able to release it. So 15 minutes on the clock. All right, focus on this, eat or do your assignment. The buzzer will go off, and then without you even having to say, they're gonna jump up and release that energy, that burst of energy. And then once they release that, come back, work on it. So it's definitely about being patient and being consistent with them. Mhm.
Thank you very much for that response. We have three other questions, and then we are done. Um, Fingers are repeatedly being pointed towards parents these days, in the face of the crime and violence that is existing in our nation. So people are pointing fingers and saying that there is and has been a breakdown in parenting, and parents are not parenting as they should, and that is responsible for the level of crime and violence that we have in our society. Um, what would you say about that? Would you say that at Paradox, has there been a detection, would you say, in the breakdown of parenting?
In terms of like, you mean in terms of like if there's been a breakdown due to lack of
Yeah.
parenting in society now?
Yes, in light of the crime and violence that we have existing and the number of young people who are involved, would you attribute this to a lack of parenting guidelines?
It can be a mixture of a lot of things. One of it, or a major factor of it could be parenting as well. But with that aspect, because how children are is based off how they were raised at home. But there's also a lot of other factors that also plays a part in it. Parenting is one aspect of it, which is also a major part where, what they learn at home is based off, what they give to the world, but also their own environments, what they see through like social media, what they learn from their friends, what they learn at schools, also contribute to that as well. And Mr. You have something you want to add with that as well?
Miss Terry Best Thompson, do you have an input? See
I
that
would
you
also
here.
say that you would have mentioned earlier that the village is important and we have stepped away from the village. So in many cases, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you
Yeah,
can.
so in many cases, the parents are working, they're not always aware. In a lot of cases, parents are ignorant to the deviances that their children are getting into. So that is one variable. So it's not that they're not trying to parent effectively, it's because they're trying to provide for their family and they're busy working or they're busy in the fields that they're not always present. Secondly, they don't always have the human resources because we have stepped away from the village. So no one wants someone else to parent or discipline their child because values are different. Discipline is based on values. So my value may be different than my neighbor's value, and what she would discipline my child for is not something that I would necessarily discipline my child for. So the lack of communication, the lack of community, and the lack of the village also impacts on that dynamic. And then in many cases, our children struggle with knowing who they are and feeling that love that Akeem mentioned before. Discipline is so important because if we do not discipline our children, if we do not guide them to what is acceptable and what is appropriate, society will then discipline them. And sometimes parents do not say, well, my child is doing this and I need assistance. When we stray away from corporal punishment and they're not able to implement other avenues to change the behavior, sometimes children do not are not held accountable for behaviors when they're young. And then they learn that they have a lot of power, and then they continue to use that power as they get older and use it ineffectively. So straying away from the village, parents not being present because in some cases they can't be, and people not always knowing what resources are available to help them implement strategies to change and guide behavior. So there's so many variables that impact on that, and parenting is definitely one, but so is the economic of the island and so many other things.
Thank you so very much for that comprehensive overview relative to that question. Thank you for that input. Another question, second last question is this. So Akeem, you spoke during the presentation on ignoring tantrums. And I recall once being in a supermarket, a public place, and I saw a little child rein back his hand and struck his mother a sickening blow beside her head, right? So you talked about, say, ignoring tantrums. A question which has been put in the chat was, how can you help a child when they get very angry and upset, yelling and screaming when it is a learned behavior?
Well, to tackle that same point of yelling and the screaming and showing signs of being very angry, a lot of the times you want to ask them well, let them calm down first, or get them to calm down, and then after asking them to explain why do they feel angry, because a lot of the times, like I mentioned too earlier in the presentation, a lot of the times when children have anger, they or show those signs or get angry, yelling, screaming, and being upset, they aren't aware of how they express their emotions. And that similar behavior, and you said, when is this behavior learned? And it could be due to them not knowing how to properly share how they feel. So the way that they feel is best to communicate is through throwing a tantrum. So what that is, you can help them by like calming them down. And once they are calm, asking them why they feel the way that they feel. It's very important to have those conversations with them and help guide them to know and explain to them that this is not the way this is not the way to get my attention. This is not the way to express when you're upset. And, showing them, correcting that behavior and, training them, instructing them, letting them know that that same behavior won't be acceptable. And if you want, mom and dad to understand how you feel, you have to, be clearer when you communicate. So it's just about teaching them, and that's way of communicating more with less, communicating more effectively instead of using screaming and violence to get attention or to get their point across.
Thank you, Akeem, for that answer. Going back to the response from Miss Terry Bess Thompson, I do agree that the not having the kind of nuclear families we used to have and moving away from the kind of village kind of living have had some kind of impact on what is happening in our society. Now, the question that has been put in the chat is this. Some parents tend to favor a particular child. How does this affect family dynamics when you have favorites? So a parent shows favoritism to one child. How does this affect family dynamics? This is a second last question, and then we'll have a last question after that.
All right. So when parents tend to have a favorite, when some parents tend to have a favorite child, children are so observant. Children are so observant. They pick up things so fast. If you was to get 2 cups of water, they would know which water have more in it. So they are able to pick these things up, and that affects the family dynamic because it damages the bond between that same particular child that's not feeling favored. That breaks the bond between them and the parents because at that point they feel as though, they feel like they aren't as loved as their sibling. They feel as though they aren't, the favorite, they aren't the most cared for, and that can result into them acting out. So like, acting out in at the home, maybe not wanting to do chores, not wanting to listen to the parents, not wanting to do anything because it's almost like I don't feel part of this family anyway because I'm clearly not the favorite. You obviously like this child more, or even affect their academics, affect their self-esteem. So, because in that point of view, at that point, then you don't feel if your parents don't have you as a favorite, it's like okay, like that really affects home and how you feel about yourself. And that doesn't just impact you or your parents, it also impacts the relationship that you have with your own sibling. That can result in you resenting your sibling. That can result in you getting physical with your sibling. That can result in a lot of discord between you and the family. Because in your mind, it's you versus everybody else. And even minor things that would occur would pop out to you, and it's like, okay, of course he got extra rice in his plate because they like him more, and then that comparison start to happen, and it'll just cause you to have more resentment for your family members. And the way to tackle that is for parents to do is to remind their children that you love each and every one of them equally. And like I say, the word love is so important. You want to be able to, express it to them. Saying it verbally is very important. So in order for them to understand and know is to just remind them. And consistency as well. Being consistent with reminding them that they are loved and cherished by you. So yeah.
Thank you very much for that answer. Final question, and this is a burning question which I have. And the general trend seems to be to stay away from the corporal punishment, a part of your presentation. So we hear a lot of individuals now saying that there is no place for corporal punishment. Now, as a boy growing up, I don't think I wouldn't say I was a bad person, but there were times when my mom especially thought it fit to give me a couple of lashes, right? There are many people who would say that they were the recipients of some corporal punishment. I know a particular pastor who would tell you that he got a lot of lashes as a young boy growing up because he was maybe a bit hard-ears, right? Um, it From the outside looking in, it doesn't appear to me as if that kind of corporal punishment caused the kind of reactions that we are hearing now. I'm looking from the outside in, so I don't have the inside. Right. So I'm wondering back in the day if individuals had that corporal punishment and it didn't push them towards being criminals, what has changed? Are there any statistics to show that corporal punishment cause individuals to go in a different direction and perhaps make them aggressive, land them in prison, and that kind of thing? Do you have any statistics to show that?
I currently don't have any statistics to show that, but from talking with like different people and I definitely did I've done a thesis for undergrad where I had to talk to people on corporal punishment to understand the long-lasting effects on that it can have. So for a lot of people, they shared that they corporal punishment didn't really impact them. They didn't think it changed. It didn't really affect their relationship with their parents. So there are those people, like you mentioned, they exist. But then there's also like a lot of other people who shared that it resulted not into like them doing crime or anything, but it also resulted in them developing, resentment or, you know, into their parents. Those same stuff that they learned, they kind of demonstrate throughout their life as well. And they also shared that although they used to get, lashes, that they didn't really learn anything from it. And remember that discipline is all about teaching. And, what lashes does is just teach you in that one moment, that short moment that, okay, this is bad, don't do that, Akeem, don't touch that. But it also kind of has that long-term effect that can really impact that relationship and that dynamic. And although for a lot of people, like I mentioned, it doesn't lead to crime, but it can also lead to like other things that could also impact someone because everybody's experiences are different. But then, yeah. Mr. You have a
Yes, go ahead now, Miss Bess Thompson. Go
And
ahead
I
and
would just
share.
add to it that I remember growing up as a child, when we get those lashes for corporal punishment, we would know exactly what we were being punished for. It was communicated. So it would be harder as you don't hear, only you would feel, I tell you don't climb this tree. And you knew exactly what the punishment was, what behavior the punishment was for. What we find now is that parents use corporal punishment when they themselves are emotional, when they themselves feel bad, frustrated, overwhelmed, angry. It's not because they're actually trying to change a behavior, it's because they're in that moment, they are embarrassed. So in that case, sometimes the punishment is not learned, is not shared in the way it's supposed to be shared. So parents can become abusive. So if you're downtown with your child and your child embarrass you and the child accustomed saying to you whatever they did in the tone they did, but someone comment on it and you lash out at the child, you have already taught that child in the environment it's okay to do this. So now when you're in public, you're confusing the child because now you're being punished for something you're accustomed doing. Discipline is based on your values. As soon as you identify that there is a particular behavior in your child that you do not appreciate, you start to teach, and Akeem talked about it. You start to train that child what they can do differently, what your expectation of him or her is. And then the punishment that you use to guide that behavior is to change that behavior. And if licks are not working, if you're just beating the child over and over and over, and the behavior is not changing, it means that the discipline is not effective, and the child is just going to learn the violence attached to the discipline because they're not learning that I am not to do this, and that is why I'm getting this, and I will change the behavior. It is a difficult time as people move away from spanking. It is a difficult time because persons do not always know what techniques they can use. And usually a discipline or a punishment for a child is often a punishment for the parent. And the parent themselves don't want to live for the punishment, so they don't want to implement the punishment. But punishments can work once children, once you're specific, you tell children, if you do this, this will happen. If I go into Woolworth and steal something, there's a possibility that I end up before the court and I end up in jail. If you go to school and you steal your classmate pencil, pen, or whatever, the teacher will be informed, your classmates will be informed, everyone will know that you behave in this way, they will not trust you. There was a story, the boy who cried wolf. If you tell lies, people will not believe you and they will not come to your aid. So it's linking behavior to consequences to help guide that behavior. So even though there are no statistics in Barbados, I welcome all researchers to get on board and start to do the research. But even though there's no statistics in Barbados, in the practice, we see the difference when children learned through discipline that is not associated with corporal punishment.
Thank you so very much for that response. I believe it would be important for parents to really learn the various aspects of discipline. And if you not using corporal punishment works, and I would be one to, I'm not advocating corporal punishment at all, but I would hope that we as parents can find that the medium between corporal punishment and a different kind of discipline. Thank you so very much for your presentation, for your thoughts that you've shared with us. What I'm going to do is give you if you have any final parting thoughts that you'd want to share with us. I'm going to give you that opportunity at this time, and then we will bring this session to a close.
All right. Sorry, do you continue? Oh, I'm just gonna just share one more time the importance of saying I love you. It goes such a long way of hearing that with not even just your children, but then in general to people you care about, but especially for children, hearing that their parents love them and care about them goes a long way. It impacts them so much. It impacts their mental health. It impacts the way that they feel about themselves. It impacts the way that they feel about your relationship they have with you, about the comfort that they have at home. So just letting them know, not just by just showing it, but even audibly doing it, giving them that affirmation to know that they are loved and cared about is very important in strengthening that bond that you have with your child. And yeah, that's it for me. Sari.
And what I will add is love is not just a saying word, it's an action word. You have to know how to show people that you love them the way they need to know that they're loved. And I want to say, you are not in this alone. Parenting is a struggle. And some days we're at a 10 and some days we're at a 2. And that is okay. What I want to say is that when you need help, when you realize that you're not functioning, when you realize that your children are not behaving the way that you would want them to, reach out. There are various social agencies out there to help you. There's Barbados, of course. There's the Barbados Family Planning. There's Men Empowerment Network. There are a variety of services out there that can assist you to enhance your coping mechanisms. One, because coping is important in parenting, and to enhance your parenting skills if needed. So don't do it alone. If you need to, reach out.
Thank you so very much. I am very glad to learn that you have these training seminars which are coming up. And I would encourage our audience to take full advantage of these parenting training seminars. One is being held at the Church of the Nazarene in Jackson, 11 weeks. And I think the other one is being held at the Barbados headquarters, which is in Perry Gap, Robert Street. So I would want to encourage all of our hearers to take advantage, or if you know anybody who would want to learn a bit more about parenting, here's a good opportunity for you to enroll in these free classes and be trained in parenting. Thanks so very much, Akeem Bethel. Thanks so very much, Miss Terry Bess Thompson, for your making yourself available to share in this session this evening. I would say that it was time well spent, and we have a lot that we can take away from the presentation this evening and what you have shared with us. Thank you so very much. I want to encourage all of our listeners to tune in next Wednesday when we have our second session. And next Wednesday, we shall be looking at a very important aspect of life and living. We shall be looking at relationships. We shall be opening and closing doors relative to relationships. It promises to be a very dynamic and interesting presentation, even as we go into our second session of our Family Life Enrichment Series 2025. Please set the date, invite your friends, your colleagues, your family, and be with us next Wednesday night for our second session, Relationships, Opening and Closing Doors. Thank you again for joining us, and I do wish you a very pleasant night.